wherever a spider can. Spins a web any size, catches thieves just like flies. Look out, here comes the Spider-Man.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to our first episode of the Amazing Spider-Man webcast. I'm Pete. I'm going to be your host. We're going to take an adventure together. Starting way back when, in the 1960s, all the way through the present day-ish, we are going to go through every issue of The Amazing Spider-Man. Now, of course, those of you who are Spider fans probably are saying, Pete, Spider-Man debuted in Amazing Fantasy 15, not Amazing Spider-Man #1, to which I say, true, you dork. And, of course, we're going to start with Amazing Fantasy 15, as opposed to just going straight to whatever. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to start with Fantasy 15, and we'll just keep on chugging. And that's all the explanation I want to do. Every podcast I've heard is like, the first episode is just, here's what should we do? What should we talk about? How's it going to go? I think the premise here is pretty straightforward, right? The only other thing I want to say about it is I don't think you have to be a Spider-Man fan at all to enjoy this. And there might be some things I get wrong. I'll do some corrections if I get something horribly wrong. But, you can feel free to correct me on Twitter at Thwipcast. And if you're the kind of person who knows how to spell Thwipcast, then you'll probably be somebody who can correct me. That would be a great place to send your dumb corrections, which I'm sure I'll be really mad about. All right, so without further ado, Spider-Man, Amazing Fantasy 15. So here's a little background, right? Amazing Fantasy was a series that came out of another series called Amazing Adult Fantasy. Now, Amazing Adult Fantasy is not probably what you would get if today you put into Google Amazing Adult Fantasy, because then it would be like, 800 women, and they have 800 boobs each. It's nothing like that. It's just, wow, this is crazy. There's like a Gollum or something like that. And also, Amazing Adult Fantasy had this hilarious slogan, which was the magazine that respects your intelligence. I mean, this is like a battle that comics have had for a long time. I think we're kind of getting there. They'll talk about Saga on NPR. Saga is like the Serial. What Serial is to podcasts, Saga is to comics, where it's like everybody's like, well, this one's okay to do. And now the revolution has begun, and everyone else is like, oh, come on. Anywho, this magazine respects your intelligence. So here's what happened. There was Amazing Adult Fantasy. They just retitled it Amazing Fantasy. And it was like these short 5-page stories, right? They were kind of like Twilight Zone shit where it's, oh my God, it was Earth all along. Oh my God, we were the aliens and the other people were the peaceful race. Oh my God, I'm the mummy. Who knew? That kind of stuff, right? And so basically, now according to what Stan Lee said, he liked to make these with twist endings and stuff like that. And what would happen is he would sort of write the stories. Here's the thing. Stan Lee had this thing called the Marvel Method, right? And it was a writer-artist working together thing where what Lee would do is he would basically give the artist a description of the plot, and then the artist would make the entire comic. So it's kind of like what James Patterson is doing today, I think, where he's like, let's see, Alex Cross meets up with a shaman in a parking garage, and and then someone's like, oh my God, I have to make a whole book out of this. Okay. So anyway, and this is also why I think there's such a battle between, at least fan-wise, there's always been a battle between Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, and why people think Stan Lee gets too much credit and Jack Kirby doesn't get enough. I don't know if I agree with that, but whatever. That doesn't matter. Who cares? So anyway, we have Amazing Fantasy. That's a series that's going on, and we get to about number 15, right? And so according to what Stan Lee says, he's like, he wanted to do this Spider-Man story, right? And he had this guy, Steve Ditko, do the cover. But then he didn't like the cover, so he had Jack Kirby basically redo it. So it's kind of like you've got the Kirby Lee team on the cover of Amazing Fantasy 15, featuring the world's first glimpse of Spider-Man. But then what was happening is the editors, where Stan Lee was like, we're canceling Amazing Fantasy. And so that was what gave Stan Lee the room to say, all right, well, I got this idea for this Spider-Man, and the editor was like, that is never going to fly. Go fuck yourself. Go fuck yourself, because it was, the early 60s. And but then once they decided they were canceling the series, they were like, all right, you can do your crazy Spider-Man, whatever that is. I doubt that's going to be lucrative. I feel like kind of a dick, because when you look at history, it's easy to look at Spider-Man now and be like, why wouldn't you think that would be a huge success? But if you're thinking about it from that perspective, it's like, I don't know. Nobody likes spiders, do they? This guy has a giant spider on his chest. He has webs all over him. No one likes webs. He's a creep. He's a weirdo. He's a teen superhero as opposed to like a sidekick or something like that. All of this is going against the things that we really think are important, right? So anyway, the publisher was like, fine, you know what? This is the last issue of Amazing Fantasy, number 15, so go for it. Do whatever you want. So they sold the idea. They had Amazing Fantasy, and that was the debut of Spider-Man. That's the issue that we're looking at today. I just also wanted to go through real quick. I think I had a thing here of like basically how it sold, or how it is today. It's like one of, I think, 3 comics that they're saying that has broke the $1 million mark at auction. It's that, Action Comics, the first appearance of Superman, and then the first appearance of Batman, whatever the hell that's in. So here we go. Let's just go through the issue. So we start off, and basically we've got, the cover is pretty great. And what's weird about Spider-Man, I have to say, is like, if you look up the cover for Amazing Fantasy 15, I'll try and include it in the description here, so you'll be looking at it with this cast. However, if you look it up, he looks pretty much like Spider-Man today. I think that that is a character where the design has stayed so close to the same, which is indicative of what a great design that is, right? That this came out in August of 1962. So we are now in 2016, do the fucking math, and he looks almost exactly the same. I think the spider on his chest is probably a little less tubby, but overall, it's kind of great. Like, I don't know, it's great to see it be the same. So we start off and we have, Spider-Man's coming, and it's got this, everyone in the picture, it's a bunch of high school students, and they all look like Archie characters, right? They're all just smiling and squinting, and, they're all dressed like they're 55 and work in an office. The women look like they're about 38. And so they're all just chatting, and this is the intro. Say, gang, we need one more guy for the dance. How about Peter Parker over there? Are you kidding? That bookworm wouldn't know a cha-cha from a waltz. Which, yeah, I guess I wouldn't. Yeah, I don't know that either. I guess I'm a huge nerd. I guess in this time, you were the nerd if you didn't know the difference between a cha-cha and a waltz. Peter Parker, he's Midtown High's only professional wallflower, and he's just kind of standing off to the side looking sad. And then his shadow cast on the building is of, a more muscular, taller figure with spider webs coming off him and shit. So we kind of cut to, he's back home with his Aunt May and Uncle Ben. They wake him up, and, oh, here, have this food. And then he's in science class doing really great. Then he very nerdily tries to ask this girl out. Sally, I was wondering if you're busy tonight. And she's like, oh, Peter, for the upteenth time, you're just not my type. And, she goes off with Flash Thompson, Peter Parker's nemesis. And so they take off in, a convertible. They just speed off. It doesn't matter. If you're a teen in the 50s, it doesn't matter if you're in Riverdale or New York City, you go speeding off in a convertible. I gotta believe, maybe it wasn't the same in the 50s, but like right now, I would think a convertible would be one of the worst things to own if you lived in Manhattan. That you would just be like sitting around exposed all the time to a bus exhaust. So Peter Parker goes to a science exhibit, this great quote, "Someday I'll show them, sob. Someday they'll be sorry. Sorry they laughed at me," which is like a lot darker in the in the current times, oh, they'll be sorry that they laughed at me. Then the next page, we see a spider get irradiated, fall on Peter Parker's hand, and bite him. And then he's like, I don't feel well. He almost gets hit by a car and jumps and hangs onto a wall. This is page 3 of Amazing Fantasy 15. And this is something that I wanted to bring up as far as the movies go. We're getting like our 3rd relaunch of Spider-Man, right? Getting our 3rd set of movies. And we have seen the origin twice now. And I'm just including the sort of modern ones. There's like a super old movie. There's a great Japanese Spider-Man movie thing that is awesome. I don't know what the plot is. I don't understand any of the dialogue, and it doesn't matter. But here's my point. How many times do we have to tell this origin, and then how long into the movie do I have to wait before he gets spider powers? This is something I complained about. Everybody loved Iron Man, it would seem. But here's what I didn't like about Iron Man. It takes like 45 minutes for him to be Iron Man. He's like running around. He's a drunk billionaire. He gets captured by terrorists, and he's supposed to be building this missile or whatever. And, he's building a mysterious project. What could it be? Well, I don't know. In the preview, I saw him bust through a cave wall in a primitive Iron Man suit. I'm in a movie called Iron Man that flashed across the thing. My ticket says Iron Man. I have a brain. I'm pretty sure I know what's going on. Like, that would have been a great reveal if someone had been like, let's hide the fact that Iron Man is a movie from this guy, and he'll just watch it happen, and then it'll be great. Because he'll just be so surprised. He'll be like, oh my God, you made an Iron Man movie. But that's not what happened. Unfortunately, I have awareness of what the world has in store for me. So here's the thing with the Spider-Man movie. I'm going to Spider-Man. We all know what happens with Spider-Man, right? And you have to go through this painful process where you're watching him like, oh my God, I have spider powers. Oh my goodness, what does this mean for the future? I don't really need that. I don't. It could be faster. And my evidence that it could be faster is that it happens on page 3 of the Amazing Amazing Fantasy. He's climbing up a building. He's climbing up your window, snatching your spider webs up. And by page 5, he's wrestling a guy, using his spider powers. And, page 7, or page 6, he's in full costume. He's in Spider-Man costume, doing Spider-Man stuff, climbing webs, 6 pages in. Which brings us to part 2, right? Now, Spider-Man's doing these little shows with his spider powers. He's showing off how good he is. And something that I like, so Spider-Man's poses and stuff are a little awkward in this. But also, early in the comics, something that happened a lot that they lose later and comes back from time to time is that Spider-Man's really creepy. And, he's creepy because he's crawling around like a fucking spider, right? Like, he looks like a creep. And he's in the dark, and he's swinging around, and he shoots. It would be really unpleasant to be covered in spider web. Even if I knew that it was not actual spider web. But, I don't assume that, like, if I'm a bank robber and I get spider webbed, that I know that this is chemical designed web made by a human man as opposed to, like, some weird secretion from this guy's butt. I don't really know. So page 9, Uncle Ben is dead. Now, we don't actually see Uncle Ben get killed, right? We just, Peter Parker goes home. The cops are like, he got killed, and then he's like, I'm going to go get revenge as Spider-Man. He goes out on the next page, tracks down the criminal to a warehouse, punches him out, and then discovers, oh my God, that's the one I could have stopped. Here we go. My fault, all my fault. If only I had stopped him when I could have, but I didn't. And now Uncle Ben is dead. And a lean, silent figure slowly fades into the gathering darkness, aware at last that in this world with great power there must also come great responsibility. And so a legend is born, and a new name is added to the roster of those who make the world of fantasy the most exciting realm of all. And that's basically the end of that story. So here's something else that I thought was really great about Spider-Man's origin. I think Spider-Man's the best superhero, by the way, if that's not evident by what's going on here already. I have an opinion on that, and it's this. Well, here's the thing. Here's what I think makes Spider-Man great and where some superheroes kind of fall down. Let's take like Green Lantern, right? What's Green Lantern's origin? Well, he's a test pilot. He discovers an alien that crashed his ship. The alien's dying. And the alien is like, here, take this ring. You seem to be like a good dude. Or the ring kind of picks him or whatever. And he's like, all right, now you're space police. The end. And here's what's missing from that. If you look at, like, what's the origin of Spider-Man, right? People will say, oh, high school student Peter Parker was bitten by an irradiated spider and became the Amazing Spider-Man. But really, his origin, that's how he got his powers. That's not how he became Spider-Man, right? Because he's got the two-stage origin. He's got, here's how I got my powers, and then he's also got, here's why I decided to become a superhero and fight crime. And it's mostly because his Uncle Ben was killed, and he's like, oh, I need to be more responsibler. Which, admittedly, not the sexiest origin, right? And actually, it does continue on like that a little bit. He doesn't actually start super fighting crime right away. He still is kind of like trying to make money and do some other things like that. But what I like about it is it gives not only the powers, but then the reason to use the powers that way. Like, I've always found Green Lantern to be weak that way, right? Because it's like, okay, well, he has this power, and then he's just all right, I'm a superhero. Or the Fantastic Four movies, well, they're terrible for so many reasons. But one of the reasons they never seem to work is they always just kind of get these weird superpowers, and somehow that just coincides with some big disaster type of thing, and then they take care of it with their superpowers, right? They just kind of become superheroes without even really thinking about it. It's not like, oh, okay, well, I guess we could do this or that with these powers. Like, Spider-Man is great because it kind of goes through, okay, I have these powers, but, Amazing Spider-Man #1 is basically about like, well, we're broke because Uncle Ben is dead. How do I make money? Like, I'm a superhero, I have superpowers. This isn't very lucrative, though. This is really unfortunate. This seems cosmically unfair. And Batman is kind of the same way, right? Batman, his origin is that he saw his parents killed in an alley and swore vengeance. And then his powers, using the term powers to mean abilities, he goes and becomes like the ultimate karate fighter or whatever. Learns karate, kung fu, gymkata, other things. Learns to fight with that weird bladed weapon that Worf has on Star Trek The Next Generation. Learns it all. He could beat anyone with a folding chair. He could beat him with a regular chair. So Batman is like Spider-Man in that he has that two-stage origin, right? Superman a little bit, because it's like, okay, he always had the powers, and he had them because he was an alien, rocketed to Earth, da-da-da-da. But then supposedly, I guess it's like his hometown values being raised by a farmer who's like, I don't know, don't be a dick, Clark. And he's like, I took those words to heart, especially the dick word. And I'm not a dick, I'm Superman. So that's something I like a lot about Amazing Spider-Man. And Amazing Fantasy 15, rather, is that he's got his two-stage origin in there, and I think that makes for a pretty good start. The last thing, there is this little insert in Amazing Fantasy 15 that's the secret of Spider-Man's mask. I used to fucking love this shit. When I was a kid and I was reading comics, we had a Fantastic Four comic that kind of showed the different Fantastic Four members and their powers, Oh, the Thing could survive these temperatures. Here's how long he could survive without oxygen. Here's how strong he is. Here's how hot the Human Torch burns. Here's all the different shapes Mr. Fantastic could be, right? I loved when they put this stuff in the end. And you don't really see this anymore. So it's got the secret of Spider-Man's mask. Perhaps you are one of the many readers who have written us to ask why Spidey's eyes don't show through his mask's eyelets. Well, there really is a reason. The white areas in Spidey's eye cutouts on his mask are really clever plastic lenses of the two-way mirror type. He can see out very clearly, but no one can see in. Therefore, he can never be recognized by the color of his eyes. See? Genius. It's not just because they didn't want to fill it in because it looks awesome. These ingenious plastic lenses also protect his eyes from dust, dirt, and the glare of the sun. Well, that's just smart. Now that's using your head, Parker. It's also got a little section about Spidey's costume. Spider-Man's colorful head mask conceals his features and also effectively muffles his voice, making it unrecognizable. So I guess that's just a bonus, because it sounds like he's talking through a sock or something like that. Light in weight and skin tight, his costume may be easily worn under his street clothes. So Spider-Man invented Under Armour, is what we learn. Spidey's high sleeves prevent his costume from being noticed if ever his shirt sleeves should become open at the cuffs. God forbid. God forbid that ever happen. Designed like an expansion watch band, Spidey's web shooter is extremely flexible. The pointer swivels around and hooks onto his belt when not in use. So it looks like a little pack of cigarettes, pretty much. So lightweight are his shoes that they can be folded and held snugly in his back pocket. Now, I wish this was real clothing. Not that I want to... Well, I do. I absolutely want to walk around in a Spider-Man costume all day. I'd have to do some more squats because I'm not confident in the butt area enough to do that. However, this sounds super comfortable and great. And I wish that someone would actually invent this so that I could walk around in a Spider-Man costume and fulfill not only the dream of being Spider-Man, but the dream of physical comfort that I think we all understand. All right, everybody. That's our first episode, Amazing Fantasy 15. Tune in next time when we're going to talk about Amazing Spider-Man Issue 1. It's got 2 feature-length Spider-Man thrillers, The Chameleon Strikes, and we might just get a guest appearance from a group of fantastic... It's the Fantastic Four. What else are you going to say at that point? All right. See you next time, webheads.
In the chill of night, at the scene of a crime, like a streak of light, he arrives just in time. Spider-Man, Spider-Man, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Wealth and fame, he's ignored. Action is